10. Black actors currently rotting in jail. You think you know the lives of your favorite black stars, but what if I told you that behind the glitz, fame, and fortune, some of the biggest names are rotting behind bars right now, from chart-topping rappers to sports legends? Their shocking falls from grace will leave you speechless. Today we're diving deep into the untold stories of 10 black celebrities whose choices and circumstances changed everything. Don't blink, this is more than gossip. It's a lesson in fame, power, and consequence. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell because you won't want to miss a single story. Tamar Traven McIntyre. Tamar Traven McIntyre, better known as Tay-K, was once the embodiment of youthful rebellion and raw energy in hip-hop culture. Born in 2000 in Long Beach, California, and later raised in Arlington, Texas, he had all the makings of a rap prodigy. By just 16, he was recording music that resonated with millions of teens online. His breakout single, The Race, went viral in 2017, not just because of its catchy beat, but because it mirrored his real-life attempt to escape the law. This uncanny alignment of art and reality instantly made him infamous. In 2016, Tay-K was implicated in a deadly home invasion in Mansfield, Texas, where 21-year-old Ethan Walker was killed. Instead of facing trial, he cut off his ankle monitor and fled. During this period, he recorded The Race, a song bragging about his escape. It quickly spread across social media and peaked on the Billboard Hot 100, cementing him as a controversial star. Yet that notoriety carried a heavy price. While on the run, Tay-K was connected to another homicide in San Antonio and several robberies, further deepening his legal troubles. In 2019, the courts came down hard. He was sentenced to 55 years for murder, plus 30 years for aggravated robbery, and 2 additional 13-year sentences for separate charges. In 2023, another conviction added 80 years. These terms run concurrently, but parole eligibility won't come until 2049, when he will be nearly 50 years old. Inside prison reports suggest Tay-K spends much of his time in isolation due to his notoriety. Despite appeals and attempts to reduce his sentence, judges have shown little sympathy, citing the violent nature of his offenses. Fans, however, remain divided. Some see him as a cautionary tale of wasted talent, while others argue he was simply a product of the harsh environment he grew up in. His lyrics, often laced with tales of survival, violence, and desperation, became hauntingly prophetic once he was locked away. What makes Tay-K's story particularly tragic is the speed at which his potential collapsed. At an age when most are finishing high school, he was already facing decades in a cell. Instead of touring recording albums or collaborating with industry giants, his reality became steel doors, concrete floors, and the long ticking clock of time served. His brief rise and swift downfall remind us of how choices made in seconds can echo for an entire lifetime. Now, Tay-K exists as both a legend in internet culture and a prisoner whose future seems sealed. His music continues to circulate, but he may never experience the freedom to perform it live again. His story is no longer just about rap. It's about the fragility of fame, the weight of consequence, and the haunting, "What if that follows his name forever?" Clifford Joseph Etienne. Clifford Joseph Etienne, widely known as the Black Rhino, once carried the aura of a heavyweight warrior destined for greatness. Born in 1970 in Lafayette, Louisiana, Etienne's path to fame was anything but traditional. Before lacing up gloves professionally, he had already served nearly a decade in prison for armed robbery. It was behind bars that he first discovered boxing, transforming himself from an inmate into a fearsome athlete. Upon release in the mid-1990s, he stormed into the ring with a ferocity that quickly earned him a reputation as one of the most aggressive fighters of his generation. Etienne's professional career skyrocketed. He compiled victories against respected opponents and gained national attention for his relentless style. In 2000, he earned a decision win over former champion Lamon Brewster, which briefly placed him among the sport's top contenders. His raw talent caught the eye of promoters, and soon he was headlining cards on national television. Yet his most famous fight came in 2003 against Mike Tyson. That night, Etienne was stopped in just 49 seconds, a crushing defeat that marked the beginning of his decline in the sport. But his troubles went far beyond the ring. By 2005, his personal life unraveled when he attempted another violent robbery in Louisiana. Armed with an assault rifle, Etienne tried to steal a car shot at a police officer and forced a family into a terrifying ordeal. These actions stunned the boxing community, especially considering his second chance at life after his first prison term. The courts showed no leniency. In 2006, Etienne was convicted of multiple charges, including attempted murder, armed robbery, and kidnapping. His punishment was staggering: 105 years in prison without parole. At the Louisiana State Penitentiary, also known as Angola, Etienne's days as a contender were permanently erased. Today, Etienne survives not through boxing, but through art. Behind bars, he has reinvented himself once again, this time as a painter. His colorful, abstract works have drawn interest from collectors and critics, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, creativity can find a way. Supporters argue that his art reflects a man searching for redemption, while critics remind the world of the violence that landed him there. The tragedy of Clifford Etienne lies not only in the length of his sentence, but in the squandered potential of a man who had already overcome incredible odds once before. He stood on the edge of stardom, shared a ring with Mike Tyson, and had the chance to secure a lasting career. Instead, his choices dragged him back into the shadows of the penal system, where he is likely to remain for the rest of his life. Etienne's name now carries dual legacies, one of ferocious punches inside the squared circle, and another of irreversible decisions outside of it. His story is a chilling reminder that discipline and talent, no matter how rare, can be undone in an instant when destructive impulses take control. Darrell Keith Henley. Darrell Keith Henley once stood as a promising figure in American football, admired for his athleticism and his future potential on and off the field. Born in Los Angeles in 1966, Henley rose through the college ranks at UCLA before being drafted in the second round of the 1989 NFL Draft by the Los Angeles Rams. As a cornerback, he was quick, disciplined, and intelligent on the field. Fans loved his style of play, and for a time it seemed like he would build a career that extended into commentary endorsements and perhaps even acting, as so many athletes often did after retirement. But beneath the public success, Henley was drawn into a darker world. During his professional career, he became entangled in a large-scale cocaine trafficking operation. In 1995, federal investigators uncovered his role in moving vast quantities of drugs across state lines, a crime that shocked teammates and fans who had admired his clean-cut image. When he was brought to trial, the evidence was overwhelming. Convicted of drug trafficking, Henley was already facing a heavy sentence, but the story didn't end there. In a twist that horrified the public, Henley was later charged with plotting the murder of the very judge who presided over his case, along with a key witness. Federal prosecutors revealed that while awaiting sentencing, he attempted to hire a hitman to eliminate those standing in the way of his freedom. This revelation transformed his case from a drug scandal into a chilling tale of desperation and betrayal. The outcome was devastating. In 1997, Henley received a sentence of 41 years in federal prison, ensuring that the prime of his life would be spent behind bars. Once a rising star on the gridiron, he was now another cautionary tale of talent consumed by greed and reckless decisions. Do you think Henley's fall proves that even professional athletes with money, fame, and opportunity can still be tempted into self-destruction? Inside prison, Henley's story faded from the spotlight. Unlike musicians or actors who continue to inspire fans through their art while incarcerated, his career ended abruptly the moment his crimes came to light. Former teammates distanced themselves and the NFL moved on without him. For younger athletes, however, his story became a quiet warning: discipline on the field must be matched by discipline off of it, or glory will not last. Henley will not be eligible for release until the 2030s, by which time he will be an old man whose days of competition are long past. What remains is the memory of what could have been a man who had the speed, skill, and charisma to thrive in sports media or entertainment, but instead chose a path that cost him everything. His legacy is not written in highlight reels or championship rings, but in federal records that detail a squandered career. Henley's journey stands as a stark reminder that opportunity, no matter how bright, can vanish instantly when crime takes the place of integrity. Robert Sylvester Kelly. Robert Sylvester Kelly, universally known as R. Kelly, once stood at the peak of modern R&B. Born in Chicago in 1967, he grew up in poverty, but displayed undeniable musical brilliance from an early age. By the 1990s, his songs defined a generation's smooth ballads, soaring anthems, and unforgettable performances made him a global superstar. His collaboration with Michael Jordan's Space Jam soundtrack produced I Believe I Can Fly, a song that earned Grammy Awards and became a timeless cultural touchstone. At one point, R. Kelly was not just a singer, he was the king of R&B. Yet behind the glamorous stage persona was a disturbing reality. For years, rumors circulated about Kelly's relationships with underage girls. Allegations intensified after his illegal marriage to 15-year-old Aaliyah in 1994 and continued with lawsuits and accusations throughout the late 1990s and 2000s. Though he was acquitted in a 2008 trial related to child pornography, the shadow of misconduct never left him. The turning point came with the explosive Surviving R. Kelly documentary in 2019, where multiple women detailed abuse, manipulation, and imprisonment at the singer's hands. Public outrage reignited investigations, and prosecutors finally gathered enough evidence to bring him to court. In 2021, in a New York federal case, R. Kelly was convicted of racketeering and sex trafficking crimes that revealed a decades-long pattern of exploitation. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. In 2022, a Chicago trial added further convictions for child pornography and enticement, stacking additional years onto his punishment. Now in his mid-50s, Kelly is incarcerated at FCI Butner, North Carolina, with little realistic chance of release before old age. Inside prison, Kelly has filed multiple appeals claiming he was treated unfairly and that evidence was mishandled, but courts have consistently upheld the verdicts. His attempts to seek freedom have been met with strong opposition from prosecutors who argue that the seriousness of his crimes demands accountability. The downfall of R. Kelly is among the most dramatic in music history. He sold over 75 million records worldwide, influenced generations of artists, and performed on the grandest stages. Yet all that wealth, fame, and recognition could not shield him from justice. His name, once synonymous with talent, is now inseparable from scandal. For many, his imprisonment offers closure to survivors who endured years of silence. For others, it's a heartbreaking reminder that one of music's greatest voices used his platform for exploitation. Kelly's story is not merely about stardom lost. It's about the power imbalance between celebrity and victim and the long fight to hold even the most powerful accountable. Today, Robert Sylvester Kelly lives not as a music legend, but as inmate number 09627-035, serving decades behind bars. His legacy, once golden, is now permanently stained. Caswell Sr. Caswell Sr., better known by his stage name Casanova, once carried the energy of Brooklyn's raw street life straight into hip-hop. Born in 1986, he grew up in Flatbush, New York, where hardship and survival shaped his early years. He spent much of his youth in and out of trouble, including multiple stints behind bars before fame ever found him. But when music finally came calling, Casanova seemed destined for something greater. His breakout single, Don't Run, in 2016 captured the grit of New York rap, earning him industry recognition and eventually a deal with Roc Nation, the powerhouse label founded by Jay-Z. For a moment, his star looked unstoppable. Casanova quickly built a reputation for high-energy performances and a street-savvy persona that felt authentic. His collaborations with Chris Brown, A Boogie Wit Da Hoodie, and Tory Lanez put him in the mainstream conversation. Many saw him as the next great voice of Brooklyn, an artist who could balance authenticity with commercial appeal. But his ties to the streets were never far behind. In late 2020, the FBI unsealed an indictment against Casanova and members of the untouchable Gorilla Stone Nation, a violent gang operating across New York and beyond. Prosecutors accused him of racketeering conspiracy to distribute drugs and even connections to shootings and assaults. Casanova turned himself in to authorities proclaiming his innocence on social media, but the evidence mounted quickly. By 2022, he entered a guilty plea to charges of racketeering and drug trafficking, admitting involvement in distributing cocaine, marijuana, and crack cocaine on behalf of the gang. In June 2023, a federal judge sentenced him to 188 months, 15 years, and 8 months in prison. Now housed in a federal facility, Casanova's once promising career is frozen in time. He will be in his late 40s when he completes his sentence, assuming no early release. The man who once performed on stages worldwide now lives under strict prison schedules, stripped of the freedom he once celebrated in his music. What makes his story especially tragic is the cycle it highlights. Casanova often spoke in interviews about using rap to escape crime, warning young people not to follow in his footsteps. Yet he himself could not sever those ties completely. His downfall became a reminder that proximity to violence and gangs can undo even the brightest opportunities. Fans continue to debate his legacy. Some argue that his honesty and raw perspective set him apart, while others feel he squandered a rare chance to rewrite his destiny. With Roc Nation behind him, Casanova could have transformed into a mainstream powerhouse, but instead his name is now tied to a lengthy prison term. Caswell Sr.'s story embodies the painful truth of wasted potential. He had the talent, the backing, and the chance to rise above the streets, but in the end, the streets pulled him back, locking away not just the man, but the music he might have created. Dante Mitchell. Dante Mitchell's story is not as widely known as chart-topping rappers or world-famous athletes, but it carries just as much weight because it is a tale of second chances thrown away. Born in New York during the early 1980s, Mitchell grew up in Albany, where crime and poverty shaped much of his youth. Like many young men drawn into the streets, he fell into violence before he was even 20. In the 1990s, he was convicted of armed robbery and other serious crimes that left him facing decades behind bars. While serving his sentence, Mitchell began to transform himself. He studied law, became a jailhouse activist, and worked tirelessly to prove that people could change if given the chance. His writings and speeches drew attention from prison reform advocates. In 2021, his efforts were rewarded when then-Governor Andrew Cuomo granted him executive clemency, effectively reducing his punishment. For a brief moment, Dante Mitchell was held up as an example of redemption proof that even those lost to the system could rebuild their lives. Upon release, he returned to Albany, where he was expected to become a voice for change. Community members invited him to speak about reform, and some believed he might one day work in politics or mentorship. The narrative seemed almost cinematic, a young man who had gone astray but found his way back through perseverance. But that hope collapsed just 2 years later. In 2023, Mitchell was arrested again, this time for his role in a shooting in Albany that left one man injured. Prosecutors argued that far from leaving behind his old ways, Mitchell had quietly returned to a violent lifestyle. In 2025, he was sentenced to 15 years in state prison, erasing the goodwill he had earned. For many who once believed in him, Mitchell's return to crime felt like betrayal. Advocates who had supported his clemency faced criticism, and community members wondered if rehabilitation was possible at all. Instead of becoming a symbol of hope, Mitchell became a cautionary tale about the risks of early release. Now in his 40s, Mitchell faces the prospect of spending most of his middle age behind bars. His story is no longer framed as one of triumph, but of wasted opportunities. In interviews before his latest conviction, he often spoke about wanting to break the cycle of violence. Yet his actions contradicted his words, pulling him back into the same destructive path. Dante Mitchell's life is a chilling reminder that not all second chances lead to redemption. Some squander the rare gift of freedom, and when they do, the consequences are permanent. For Mitchell, the doors that once opened so generously have closed again, this time perhaps for good. Daystar Shemuel Shua Peterson. Daystar Shemuel Shua Peterson, globally known as Tory Lanez, rose from humble beginnings in Brampton, Ontario, to become one of the most versatile artists of his generation. Blending rap, R&B, dancehall, and even pop, Tory carved out a space where he could stand alongside the biggest names in music. With multi-platinum hits like Say It and Love and collaborations with Chris Brown, Meek Mill, and Drake, his career seemed unstoppable. By 2019, he had built not only a loyal fan base, but also a reputation as an artist who could dominate any soundscape. But everything changed on the night of July 12, 2020. Following a Hollywood Hills party hosted by Kylie Jenner, an argument broke out inside a vehicle carrying Tory Megan Thee Stallion and two others. What happened next shocked the music world. Megan was shot in the feet, and she later accused Tory Lanez of pulling the trigger. For months, the hip-hop community debated, with fans divided between believing Tory's denials and Megan's testimony. In December 2022, after a highly publicized trial, a Los Angeles jury found Tory Lanez guilty on 3 felony counts: assault with a semi-automatic firearm, possession of a loaded and unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and negligent discharge of a firearm. In August 2023, he was sentenced to 10 years in state prison. The courtroom drama cemented his fall from stardom into infamy. Since entering prison, Tory Lanez has appealed his conviction, maintaining that the trial was unfair and insisting he was wrongfully convicted. However, his pleas have so far failed to overturn the sentence. His legal troubles have overshadowed his music, and though fans continue to stream his catalog, his once bright future has been permanently dimmed. What makes Tory's downfall especially haunting is the sheer contrast. A man celebrated for his voice, charisma, and artistry is now silenced by the prison system. At the height of his fame, he had the chance to elevate Canadian hip-hop to new levels, but instead, his name is now linked to violence, controversy, and wasted potential. Inside prison walls, Tory is adapting to a reality far removed from the flashing lights and festival stages. While his legal team continues to push for appeals, each passing year erases more of the momentum he once enjoyed. The music industry moves fast, and by the time he is free again, a new generation of artists may have completely taken his place. Daystar Shemuel Shua Peterson's story is one of talent, ego, and consequence. He had the world at his feet, but a single violent night in Los Angeles changed everything. For Tory Lanez, the cost of that night was not just his freedom, it was the destruction of the legacy he worked so hard to build. Tavares Lamont Taylor. Tavares Lamont Taylor, better known as Lil Reese, emerged from the gritty streets of Chicago as one of the key voices of the drill music movement. Born in 1993, he grew up on the city's South Side, where poverty and gang activity shaped much of his early life. By his late teens, Reese was already collaborating with Chief Keef and Lil Durk, two other rising stars of drill. His raw delivery on songs like Us and his feature on Chief Keef's I Don't Like made him one of the hottest young rappers in Chicago around 2012. For a brief moment, Reese seemed destined to ride drill's wave into national stardom. But Chicago's drill scene was built on both music and mayhem, and Lil Reese became entangled in the violence that often surrounded it. Over the years, his name appeared in countless police reports and headlines about shootings, assaults, and arrests. In 2013, he faced charges for theft and assault. In 2016, he was arrested again on related charges. While he continued releasing music, his reputation outside the studio was one of instability and danger. The most infamous chapter of Reese's life came in May 2019, when he was shot in the neck with an AK-47-style rifle in a Chicago suburb. Miraculously, he survived, though the incident left him gravely injured. Just 2 years later, in May 2021, he was shot again, this time during a gunfight connected to a stolen vehicle. Once again, he lived, but the cycle of violence seemed endless. By 2022, Lil Reese's career had nearly stalled. Though he still released music independently, mainstream labels and major platforms had largely distanced themselves from him due to the constant trouble. Instead of being celebrated for his role in pioneering drill, he became a cautionary tale of what happens when the streets and the spotlight collide. In 2023, reports surfaced of Lil Reese being jailed on domestic violence charges in Texas, further compounding his legal troubles. Though the sentence was not as lengthy as other high-profile cases, it underscored the recurring pattern bursts of music potential interrupted by arrests, shootings, and personal downfall. Fans who once saw him as the next big name in hip-hop now debate whether his story has already reached its tragic conclusion. At just 30 years old, Reese has already survived multiple shootings and spent years cycling through courts and jail cells. He should be enjoying his prime as an artist, yet instead he struggles to reclaim relevance while living under the shadow of past violence. Tavares Lamont Taylor's story is not simply about wasted talent, it is about how environment choices and the pressures of fame collide. Lil Reese helped shape a movement that changed rap forever, but his inability to escape the cycle of violence may keep him from ever reaching the heights his talent once promised. Willie Jr. Maxwell II. Willie Jr. Maxwell II, known to the world as Fetty Wap, was once one of the most celebrated names in hip-hop. Born in 1991 in Paterson, New Jersey, Fetty grew up in a working-class neighborhood where music became both an escape and a calling. He lost his left eye to congenital glaucoma at a young age, a feature that later became a part of his distinct image. By 2015, Fetty Wap had taken the rap world by storm with his infectious debut single Trap Queen. The song climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, earning him a Grammy nomination and cementing his place in the industry. Following Trap Queen, Fetty delivered a streak of hits including 679 My Way and Again. His melodic sing-rap style set him apart, and his self-titled debut album entered the Billboard 200 at number 1. For a moment, Fetty Wap was everywhere on the radio, at festivals, and across award shows. Yet behind the fame and money, darker forces were pulling him back into a lifestyle he had once sought to escape. By the late 2010s, Fetty's career momentum slowed. Personal issues, legal troubles, and disputes with his label clouded his once bright future. Then came the turning point. In October 2021, Fetty Wap was arrested at Citi Field in New York, accused of being part of a multi-million-dollar drug trafficking ring. Federal prosecutors alleged that Fetty and his associates distributed more than 100 kilograms of heroin, fentanyl, and crack cocaine across Long Island and New Jersey. The news shocked fans. How could a man who once topped the charts end up in such a dark operation? In May 2022, Fetty pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute at least 500 grams of cocaine. The admission stunned the hip-hop world, as it confirmed he had traded music studios for criminal networks. In May 2023, a federal judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison, calling it a tragic waste of talent. Today, Fetty Wap serves his time in a federal facility far from the stages and fans who once screamed his name. He will likely be released in his mid-30s, but by then, the rap industry may have shifted completely, leaving him struggling to reclaim relevance. His story echoes a theme seen too often in hip-hop, the inability to fully separate from the past, even when success offers a way out. Willie Jr. Maxwell II had it all: chart-topping singles, wealth, and global fame. But his choices dragged him back into the very streets he once rapped about. For Fetty Wap, prison has become the stage he never wanted, and the world can only wonder if he will ever find redemption once the doors open again. Demetrius Edward Flenory. Demetrius Edward Flenory, better known as Big Meech, is one of the most infamous names in American criminal history. Born in 1968 in Detroit, Michigan, he and his younger brother, Terry Southwest T. Flenory, grew up in a working-class home where opportunities were scarce. By the late 1980s, the brothers entered the drug trade, starting small but dreaming big. Those dreams became reality when they founded the Black Mafia family BMF, an organization that would dominate America's cocaine distribution network for nearly 2 decades. At its peak in the early 2000s, BMF was moving thousands of kilograms of cocaine across the United States each month, with operations stretching from Los Angeles to Atlanta. Federal agents estimated their revenue in the hundreds of millions of dollars, making them one of the largest and most powerful drug empires in modern U.S. history. But Big Meech was more than a drug kingpin. He was also a cultural figure. Through BMF Entertainment, he attempted to launder money by promoting hip-hop artists and parties, rubbing shoulders with celebrities, and shaping the early 2000s rap scene. The line between crime and culture blurred, and for a while Big Meech lived as if untouchable. But no empire lasts forever. In 2005, after years of surveillance, the DEA dismantled BMF in a massive operation. Big Meech and his brother were arrested and charged with running a continuing criminal enterprise. In 2008, Demetrius Flenory was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to drug trafficking and money laundering. His fall was as spectacular as his rise, once surrounded by luxury cars, mansions, and music stars, now confined to a prison cell. Big Meech has been serving his sentence at a federal facility in Oregon, though recent reports suggest he could be eligible for release in the early 2030s, partly due to sentencing reforms and good behavior. While incarcerated, his legacy has been kept alive through hip-hop references and the popular Starz series BMF, which dramatizes the rise and fall of the Black Mafia family. His son, Demetrius Lil Meech Flenory Jr., even portrays him in the show, keeping his story alive for a new generation. To many, Big Meech represents the ultimate cautionary tale, incredible wealth and influence built on a foundation of crime destined to collapse under the weight of law enforcement. To others, he remains a legend of street culture, a man who turned poverty into power, but paid the ultimate price. Now in his mid-50s, Big Meech's days of ruling the streets are long gone. What remains is a legacy that continues to inspire debates about crime culture and consequence. Whether seen as a villain, a folk hero, or a tragic figure, Demetrius Edward Flenory's name will forever be etched into the history of America's underworld. In the end, the stories of these icons remind us that greatness often comes with shadows, and legacies are rarely simple. Some see cautionary tales, others see inspiration, and many find both. What we cannot deny is the impact these figures left on culture, music, and history, an impact that continues to spark conversation long after their rise or fall. At Legends of Black Excellence, we celebrate these lives not just for their triumphs, but for the lessons hidden in their struggles. So tell us, are these legends victims of circumstance or architects of their own fate?